Blaze the igniting spark. One might wonder why this video is getting released over a year after release, so here's why. Blaze is good in exclamation algorithm critical contentions, RACC for short. Like, really good. In fact, she is quite literally part of the strongest duo when it comes to killing raids, and this by a very wide margin. Excluding Chen, but shh. It's good practice when you use units regularly to understand their kits to their fullest, and it turns out, even so much time after release, I still found out a ton of stuff about her, ranging from anywhere to, hey, is that actually be good, to, what's even the point and what am I doing with my life? Skill 1. It barely reaches 600 DPS. Sure, it's true AoE, works against ground and natural targets, but come on, this is 2026. The burn injury gets reduced by the enemy's res, and most trash mobs will either die before the burn proc happens, or they'll already be at low HP, at which point any other modern AFK skill does a better job. However, there are two important features to this skill that don't show up on the team, starting with Sourceless. Almost everything has a source in Arknights. Cruz shoots the bad guys, the projectile is sourced to Cruz. Susuro is an ally, the healing is sourced to Susuro, even if there is no projectile. Having a source for your attacks and abilities can be important. For example, use S3, which summons a firewall, requires a source of an attack to target an enemy on the other side of it. Otherwise, you can't build a burn on your opponents. Some operators and enemies have ways to reflect damage at the attacker, but Nancy is typically the operator that comes to mind when you think about damage reflect, even if she's far from being the only one, and even if Ochialter S1 now beats her to it. Oh well, she had her time. Back when Blaze Alter got released on CN, S1 used to behave a bit differently from today. It had something unique to it. When she applied her S1 to an operator, the targeted operator is considered the source instead of Blaze herself. This led to some weird interactions where, for example, using it on Ines while her skill 2 is active will lead to every tick of the skill to generate DP, as if Ines herself was the one attacking the enemy. This the feature had the potential to break the game. Imagine if an operator could apply cold on every attack. Suddenly you can potentially get a permanent, true AoE, low effort way of freezing all enemies in a 3x3 area. Pretty good. So, Hypergrave fixed it, and now the skill is properly sourced to Blaze Alter herself. Just kidding. Instead of sourcing to Blaze, they sourced it to nowhere. The damage is considered sourceless, and that's where things get interesting. For example, if you were to damage an enemy who can reflect damage, nothing would happen, because the skill has no source. It also means that if you remove Blaze herself, the effect will persist. Remember, the skill does not have a source, so returning Blaze does not remove the source, quote unquote. Makes sense, right? But it also comes with another quirk. Snapshotting. Because the skill has no source, it needs to know in advance how much damage it needs to deal. To do so, it takes an instant photo of the operator's attack as the skill is being cast and saves it in memory. If the operator's attack changes while the skill is still ongoing, it won't know about it. So, let's say, completely hypothetically of course, that will bring a lot of temporary buff to Blaze's attack right before the snapshot happens. Then it will keep in its memory a particularly high value, so even if you were to buff the attack by say 100% for just 5 seconds, if the skill lasts 20 seconds, it will retain the 100% extra attack for the entire duration. That'd be pretty nice, but most buff scales already last 15 or 20 or 30 or so seconds, so this doesn't sound that worth when considered the Blaze skill lasts just 20 seconds. Except, it's actually pretty good, because if Blaze casts her skill on an operator who already has skill 1 active, she only refreshes the duration, but the snapshot attack will remain the same. I wonder if we could possibly abuse that. Congratulations, we have a way to buff this skill beyond reason. Have it last forever, and as a bonus, it now also has enough damage proc burn consistently, reducing the enemy's res. You're welcome. Skill 2. I mean, it's not a bad skill as long as you're dealing with ground targets only. Works well enough for most people, but it doesn't have too many interactions to its name, so free! Let's talk about ammo for a little bit. Today, we have pretty limited ways to recover ammo. You either need to play an IS-6 and get very specific collectibles, or you need to be using lateral operators, in which case your means to restore ammunition is still quite limited. In this year's scenario, we have Santax Apparato, aka the Holy Blender, on skill 1, restoring a single ammo to Executor who is next to him. But you'll notice after a while, Executor no longer recovers ammo at all. By default, all operators are only allowed to replenish ammo up to their ammo cap, so up to 16 in Executor's case. Blaze, however, does not care. As long as you got enemies burning, she will replenish some ammo, without the cap. But enemies here is applied very loosely. Some targetable devices will actually allow Blaze also to regenerate ammo, like the anti-net launcher in Array. Although some others will simply not function, like stainless turrets. Those simply won't work. For the full list of devices that work, or not, that I personally tested, you can just pause the video. Let's be honest, it probably won't be relevant in most cases, but you know, it's just a bonus. Revive mechanic. Last mechanic to cover, we're almost done covering everything about Blaze Altar. Do not take a look at the remaining time on this video, I swear to grace. At a glance, this talent is pretty simple. When Blaze Altar takes lethal damage, she enters a downstate, stops attacking against a barrier, starts regenerating HP, and once she is full, she stuns the enemies and she comes back to a normal state. Pretty standard. And then I had the terrible idea of looking at PRTS wiki for everything that happens during our downstate. This talent effect can be triggered before HP reaches 0 and can be triggered an unlimited number of times while not in the reignite state. When triggered, it interrupts on skills, clear on buffs, switches to reignite form and gains a barrier, plus 0-3 seconds of invisibility and invulnerability. During reignite form, block count drops to 0, gains HP recovery, percentage, healing reduction, force disarm, silence, stun immunity, stun counter, freeze immunity, freeze counter, immobilization counter, and sleep immunity. If HP fully restored in reignite form, stuns enemies within 1.7 radius, back gains barrier, switches back to the usual form. During these effect animations, the user reduces invisibility and invulnerability. What did I get myself into? Healing nullification, but not really. Let's start relatively simple. During a down state, Blaze cannot be healed by normal means. A medic will simply not target her, and even if a projectile is going toward Blaze and she goes toward down phase, the healing will be reduced to 0. Now, if you play with NBT operators and summons for any length of time, you probably already know that it's still possible to heal using regeneration effects like Perfumer, Tin Man Skill 2, or Force Altar as well. In fact, it effectively turns Blaze Altar into a very, very potent tank, since she comes up with a replenishable 6000 barrier, renewable 5-second stun, and invisibility frames. In fact, she becomes so tanky that I struggle to find a proper target to showcase it, but after a long while of searching, I had just the idea. Also, on CN, there is now a module available that allows her to reflect significant amounts of heart and burn damage, if you feel like pushing this even beyond what you see. The footage you're seeing is from Bilibili, and the link to the video is in the description if you want to see some more. Now, some of you might be aware of some interesting happenings during CCB3. One of the max risk strats relying on Blaze Altar's Revive to permastun all enemies near the blue box. But that shouldn't be possible. Sure, you can have calcite targets Blaze as she is losing HP and makes a projectile travel, only landing when Blaze in her down phase, but she shouldn't be ill at all. Like, remember this healing reduction right here. If you try to do the same with other medics, the healing will be reduced to 0, so how come? Well, calcite is allowed to heal a monster, the summon, so she probably has some special coding going on that allows her to ignore some forms of healing reduction. But when I swap out an operator from NBT1 trying to achieve the same result with NBT operators, it just didn't work. A monster, not medic this time, can actually make use of her own summon to then proceed to heal enmity operators by quickly deploying an enmity operators while the projectile is traveling. But somehow I couldn't get the trick to work with Blaze Alter. I'm not entirely sure why. I still do not have an explanation for why things are this way, so instead here is a metaphorical approximation of the source code of Arknights. Oh yeah, and if you want, you can use Spectre Alter S1 to instantly revive Blaze. It also works for any enmity operator. I'm sure it will be useful to someone someday. Self-redeployment! Also featuring the biggest spaghetti code from this side of Terra. For context, I play ACC. One of the main reasons I wanted to investigate Blaze Alter is because I noticed some interesting features during my run. Namely, whenever Blaze Alter would go to a downstate or coming back from it, she has a singular shield, absorbing a single instance of damage. This is because in Array you can acquire the Protection Kit, which grants a single shield to your operators on deploy. Since Blaze gets a shield, that must mean that whenever she changes state, it counts as a redeploy. A very, very special kind of redeploy, the spaghetti flavor kind. But to confirm this, I thought about going to IS, trying to find the focus, the collectible on screen, and see whether it actually works when Blaze changes states. After googling 4 hours of grinding to get this Grace Bearer Forsaken collectible, I realized right as I acquired it and started testing it, that Rosmotis literally has the same effect with her IS module summoning tactical equipments. And thus that I wasted 4 hours for something I could have tested in about 3 minutes. Why? Putting aside the existential dread that troubled me for about 20 seconds, let's go over what happens. When Blaze Alter goes to a downstate, she summons is that 2 tactical equipments? Wait, what? When she goes down, it counts as 2 redeploy? What? Okay, what about going from downstate to a normal state? Okay, just 1 redeploy, that's more normal. Kind of. But if we go back to the first part where she goes down, we do notice how the tactical equipments, I'm just going to abbreviate them as Ts from now on, do not spawn instantly. Now, if you play with Rosmantis and her IS module, you already know that the Ts spawn very fast after you deploy an operator, just 2 frames right after. I calculated that it takes about 9 frames between the moment when the first and the second T spawn, which happens to match the indicated 0.3 seconds of invisibility shown on prts.wiki. Anyway, it's nice to see the numbers are finally checking out. But let's recap. So, step 1, Blaze Alter takes lethal damage, she instantly redeploys on her own position, she gets a barrier and she becomes invincible. 0.3 seconds later, she finally becomes not gettable again and she redeploys herself in the same position again. And 3, after being fully healed, she also redeploys herself on her own position one last time. There currently are not too many mechanics to make the this very weird form of redeployment abusable, apart from, I guess, Rosmantis herself. But now you may at least consider bringing both Blaze Alter and your Roscat in IS to start spawning a bunch of Ts everywhere. Yeah, at least it's one practical application. Also, if you happen to have exceedingly high amounts of healing on Blaze Alter as she goes down to her phase 2, you might manage to get her stuck in a down state. Yes, I know it looks like she's about to revive, but if you pay attention, she does not have a barrier, her HP is full, and she won't attack. In fact, she won't do anything until her skill is activated, after which she is back to normal. Phew. Now, while we got confirmation that Blaze changing states does count as redeployment, there are a few stinkers. You see, the way she redeploys doesn't match with what our other 2 operators usually do, namely Opinus and Monster. For one, any targeted buff or debuff on them will be removed the moment they use their skills, as if you took the time to retreat them and then redeploy them. This leads to situations in which mechanics that are meant to punish you for redeploying will severely impact them. But Blaze does not have the same issue, even though she redeploys twice in a very brief 0.3 second. Another one is that IS comes with collectibles that gives extra SP on deployment, which works with Open as a monster, but it does not work with Blaze. Yet another thing is that you can actually interrupt both OPs and monster when they attempt their initial deployment, but if we try to do the same with Blaze Alter, just straight up nothing happens. That said, you can't prevent the skill from finishing for any of them, be it the OP, monster, or no Blaze. Hold on a second, why is Blaze Alter still asleep after going back to a normal state? Buff persistence. See, I had always suspected that something was wrong with Blaze. Not in that way. In Reclamation Algorithm, you have the Vanilla Wing, an exotic beast that does various things, including putting a buff on your operators that does a bunch of things. One of them being to reduce the deployment timer by 25%. It's pretty nice because in Air ACC you get a debuff that doubles your timer, so being able to reduce it is a nice bonus. However, one day I happened to notice that after fighting a raid and retreating Blaze that her redeployment timer was reduced to about 15 or so seconds. Well, that can't be right. Her base timer is 70 seconds, doubles to 140 seconds, reduced by 25% should be 105 seconds. The only way this could work is if the reduced redeployment timer from the Vanilla Wing applied multiple times. Now, that particular situation is exceedingly niche and thus not particularly abusable, but it does beg the question, does it work for any other buff? This is a part of the testing where basically nothing makes sense anymore. Some buffs like Warframe S2 and Vandal S2 disappears the moment Blaze goes to her down state, yet if you apply them as Blaze is down, she will still have them when she goes back up. Even if you murder Blaze with AC S2 or S3, she will retain the buff throughout the entire duration, no matter whether she goes down or revives. I tried using both Silence Alter and Old Shelter to see if I could prevent Blaze from going down to a down state. Does not work. I tried countless buffs, Nasty Style, AS Passive, Status Skill 1, Earrings Camouflage, Multi-Mass SP Recovery, and yet some more. Some of them aren't actually targeted and will just apply to both of Blaze's states, regardless of whether she goes down to revive, so in some of the stats were mostly pointless. With one exception, Lean's Shield. Lean S2 allows her to share talent with all nearby operators, but there is one very minor quirk for Blaze in particular. If you use Lean S2 while Blaze is down, and the skill is still active as she revives, Blaze will keep the shield. Permanently. It doesn't matter whether she receives damage with otherwise a broken Lean shield or whether you retreat Lean, as long as Blaze does not go down again, she will retain the shield. There are exactly too many ways to abuse this mechanic, since the opportunity cost is usually not worth it. You are missing out on Lean S3, for example, and it's not like there are many situations in which this is actually useful. Although one of the situations happens to be ARACC, since it allows Blaze Alter to no longer have to worry about Vanguardians. Pretty fitting, considering this is where the feature was discovered. Props goes to Asadekai for the find, link to his channel in the description. All in all, not everything showcased here will necessarily be useful. Some of the things are definitely too niche to be useful to most people, but who knows. Next time you need to deal with enemies that reflect damage to you, you can now consider a skill 1, or maybe you bring Rosmontes in IS and just want to spam some Ds all over the place without having to redeploy all your other casters and snipers. And maybe you'll start your own run of ACC and you'll be very happy to just blast the dumb Vanguardians into oblivion. Either way, you know that in the future you should keep an eye out for any target above that could be made permanent on Blaze. Who knows? That, or anything that has to do with deploying the operators. Who knows? Something else might slip up the giant spaghetti balls that is Arknights source code and break the space-time continuum. Again. Anyway, that is it for today. I will see you another time, Doctor. In the meantime, have a nice day.